Hey everyone, welcome. I'm planning to check in on my African nightcrawlers. This system's been in service for 154 days now, and it was last fed 10 days ago. They got stuff that I don't think is going to last very long, just the peels of some stuff, and I think the whole idea was that we'd be coming back pretty soon. Sometimes I load up a lot of my other systems with so much bedding that I feel like I could wait 2 weeks easy. Here, I think we were a little bit skimpy on the bedding. We might change that on this go around and give them a little bit more than last time. Then maybe that next time I'll feel like I can go more than 10 days and feel comfortable that even if the kitchen scraps they got as a meal have been eaten, maybe all the bedding I give them will keep them busy for a little while longer. So I think that's going to be my theme today. Try to boost up the bedding after the feeding or with the feeding. So let's get them up on the bench and get them fed. I've got some torn up newspaper here and my supply of prepared bedding to help me reach that goal of being generous today with the bedding. And a lot of times we'll use the old coffee filter that we find in the system as bedding too, because a lot of times we're coming in with a brand new one, and we could do the same thing here too. Why not? Now, I guess first impressions, first of all, I got to take into account the fact that we deliberately covered with only paper here. So the fact that it's a little bit dry shouldn't come as any surprise to me. But I guess first impression is that we've got a fairly dry top surface here. Hopefully that doesn't extend deep down into the bin. At 150 days of age, I would have to think that you wouldn't have to go far within the system to reach nice, cozy, damp material. And it does feel to me like I maybe dug down the depth of a couple fingers. Maybe not even that much. Might have only been about the depth that equates to the thickness of one of my fingers, and we're already reaching some nice damp materials here. I guess this is what happens when some of the food that you give them is left near the surface and is permitted to dry. I think these are possibly the shells or the skins or whatever of avocado, and they're so dry I'm able to just crumble them up. I guess we've got a couple options. We can try to preserve what moisture's in here, not let it continue to evaporate into the air and dry the bin, and also as a result make the top surface into a space where the worms don't even pay attention to the material there. Yeah, might be a good time to just cover this system with plastic, at least for a little while, so that it can kind of get back on its feet and get humming along. Hopefully we'll just kind of dig down a little bit and find that everything's doing fine here. The materials we added last time, the food, was a whole bunch of peels. I think it might have been cucumber peels, but just from the look of it, it could have possibly even been apple peels. To tell you the truth, I don't even remember what it was, but it did look like something the worms would really take a shine to. And we're bumping into some of the old foods that they've received. Some of these little cut up pieces of corn are similar to what they're getting here today. The corn is the only frozen food that they're getting today. This old pepper, this old tomato, the coffee out of the coffee machine, none of that was in the freezer. Most of the stuff I give the worms is frozen, but not always. So this weird thing you're starting to see in here, people are probably questioning, like, what the heck is that? And if you weren't here, it would be kind of a mystery. So the only remnant, the only throwback at this point to the system that these worms came out of 154 days ago was, up until just last week, was still the cocoon nursery. We held on to the castings. We wanted to give the material some time so that any baby worms in it might get rounded up. And I think it was kind of a failure because I don't remember any babies getting rounded up out of those castings. I might be just getting it confused with another system, but I don't know. That's how I remember it. And then here we had some material which we didn't know if it would continue breaking down or not. It was a bunch of stuff that went through my shredder, so it had the same size and proportions, dimensions, everything. Here's some of it. Stuff that seemed like it might be, I don't know, weird. It was kind of springy and stretchy, and I questioned whether it would continue breaking down in here. So that was the whole idea of keeping it isolated from the rest of the bin's contents by being in this bag here. So this stuff we bought over from the cocoon nursery. This was all stuff that's sifted out of the cocoon nursery, and a lot of it is just it's just clumped together castings, and as they continue to dry off a little bit and I'm able to crumble it, it'll actually start passing through this screen thing. So we'll reclaim all those castings that couldn't get harvested originally because they were just clumping together with materials nearby. We'll actually be salvaging some nice castings, and it always seems like something like this is what you find. I think this just was in the middle of the last larger size clump I just opened up. There's usually some sort of a clump of bedding or food or something within most of these clumps. But once it dries to a certain point, it all just crumbles apart, and now you got castings again. Plus a bunch of freed up little bits of stuff that was caught inside each of those little boulders. So I just thought that this might run here within the system for a little while longer. See about trying to let this material break down, but in an isolated way. So let's see here. Leftover foods, leftover stuff. I got nowhere to put it. All right, we're gonna put the, ooh, all right. So it does seem like the worms sort of started heading to the bottom of the bin to get to a spot where it's still nice and moist and damp. It does seem like we probably want to help boost up the moisture level in here. So I guess besides boosting up bedding, we're going to want to boost up moisture in here too. That's easy enough to do, right? A lot of our bedding, like my prepared shredded paper, is already, well, it's not just paper, shredded paper, cardboard leaves, everything. That mix is already pretty damp just the way it is, right out of the box. But these pieces of newspaper that we're going to drop in here with the feeding, these can all get dampened. I'll just go ahead and get my squirt bottle, bring it out here onto the table, and we'll be sure to add a good bit of moisture into this system to help it along. And then by doing so, I'll feel like we could just continue with the paper-only coverings. So how does that sound? Let's do that. And we'll grab a couple of these pieces of newspaper, dry, so we'll dampen them to start off. We've also got this salvaged, nice seasoned paper that probably went in with the last feeding. Alright. That's a good bit of moisture. Am I going overboard? I'd like to think not. Also drop some of this in. Like I said, this stuff's pretty damp too, but I felt like I should just drop it in there and let it be sort of a sponge to pick up what's in those little puddles down there. That's going to create a really nice damp lower section of the bin. Maybe just to make it not completely bedding, we could drop in a little bit of my worm chow. Just a little bit of dry food, which I keep hearing benefits from being dampened. So really quick, we'll give that a little bit of moisture too, rather than just dropping it in here dry. Then I keep feeling like we've got to make room for this thing too before we load up the feeding area, because this, I guess it's going to float near the surface like it did last time. And maybe if I could just sort of squash it down so it doesn't come up as high, we can submerge the entire thing. And I guess we don't want to have a bunch of these leftover bits of corn cob floating out on the surface either. Let's make sure we return all that food that we found along the way right down into the feeding area too. And let's see. Let's start bringing in the food itself. Now, let's see. I was even wondering, like, if we were to put this right here, all the juices coming out of this thing would keep this whole little feeding location really, really damp, just from the juices coming out of the tomato. I'm just wondering if that brings us up a little bit too high. Let's try that. I'll do what I can to cover it up, and then the rest of this stuff can just go right in on the other side. None of this stuff appears like it's going to bring with it a great deal of moisture. It's just a few more of these little corn cob bits. I guess that's not so much our theme today, right? Today our theme is going to be more bedding. More and more bedding, as much as we could fit in here. So let's see what we could pull off. That was just another layer of more or less wet stuff, which we're going to moisten even more. I'm even thinking this stuff here might benefit from a little bit of moisture too. You saw me trying to crumple it all up as it was still clumping together by being a little bit damp, so I'm not looking to declump it or break it up right now. We can just let it stay moist for the purpose of letting the worms really focus on breaking the stuff down nicely. And oh geez, I got the tip of my spray bottle dirty. I am such a unattentive, careless worm farmer here. See if I can get this cleaned off. Just seems like the way I prefer to get my work done. Personal preference, I guess. So let's see. I do also see the old coffee filter that we're going to reuse here. So this is just even more bedding to include with our feeding. It's not going to be torn up or shredded. It's just going to go right in here on top of all the foods. Might actually end up being a good sort of protective covering for that tomato so it doesn't draw pests. Sort of like that. And then that's our new feeding zone marker. There we go. And all that coffee just suddenly becomes my excuse to bring in a little bit more shredded paper and cardboard mix here to combine it with. And now you would have to say for sure, I think at this point we've been extremely generous with bedding today. The trick here is, I guess, getting the thing covered up properly. Even that coffee filter was starting to seem like it was a little bit dry. I figured let's put some moisture on there too. And by using this as an excuse to rinse off my glove, even more moisture is going in now. But I don't want to turn a little bit dry into a swampy, muddy mess either. Let's stop there and assume that we've created a nice moisture zone in here that we're not going to have to worry too much about, and we could just cover it all up with this somewhat dry material. Kind of makes me want to spray it down as well. Although perhaps what we could do instead is dampen the top covering paper. That's usually what I like to do. I'll usually put down the feeding zone indicator to help me find my way back to where we last fed, and then, oh geez, I almost forgot, but we'll use these, I guess, as further top covering type papers here to sort of help suppress the moisture from being lost to evaporation. And by moistening these as well, can't hurt. I really got very soiled there somehow. Let's get all this stuff off my glove. I guess my glove was so soaking wet that it attracted all that coffee when I laid out the coffee filter. And now I'm even wondering if dampening the top covering paper is going to be necessary. It just seems like putting it in like this is going to be fine. But you know what? What the heck? Let's go with the idea, because it certainly can't hurt, and it isn't going to last long, you know. A damp piece of paper just sitting out here exposed to the air is going to pretty much dry off within a few hours, I would say. So it's not going to make much of a difference. I just figured, what the heck, let's see what we could do about trying to correct the system's moisture, since we did sort of observe right off the bat how it all seemed a little bit overly dry. It can only help, I think. And you know, I'm looking around here, we could have certainly added more worm chow, but we didn't, and that's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. We gave them tons and tons of bedding. I even have my grit here ready to go, and we totally forgot to add it. But it's too late now. We're done. I'm putting this thing away, and that's the end of the video. So I'm not going to keep you around for putting things away and cleaning things up. That stuff's boring. Before I go there really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye.